Hi, this is Amy from Good Food Unearthed, and today I am joined by two lovely women, Sarah and Kristen, and they are both nurses. And they have formed Canadian Frontline Nurses, which we're going to talk about. And I'd like to just give you both the floor to introduce yourselves, and maybe we could do a quick uh, go into your personal stories on why you chose to speak out, what you've seen happening, and who you typically work with. All right. So, which one of you would like to introduce yourselves first?
Go for it, Sarah.
Okay. Hi, so my name is Sarah. I've been a nurse since 2004, and I worked in a nursing home for most of my career. For me, the way all this started about me not being so sure about the medical industry, I would say it started in 2016. I have a troubled past and mental health issues. And in 2016, I started having a lot of physical health issues. And the doctors kept sending me to get a lot of different tests and stuff, and they couldn't find nothing. And I was literally falling apart. I had muscle problems, I had joint problems, I had bone problems. They thought I had arthritis. I had irritable bowel syndrome. I was having problems with my reproductive system. I felt like I had bugs crawling all over my skin. I had memory loss and I had balance issues, literally falling apart. And the doctors kept telling me that it was in my head and that it was probably part of my complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I knew very well it wasn't. And so finally I started doing my own research because I was like, I'm going to die before they find what's wrong with me. And so I started reading a lot and I found out about fibromyalgia. And at the same time, I was being sent to a neurologist, but it takes time. And so I kind of figured what I had before I had it. And I had read a lot about it. And so when they diagnosed me, they told me that it was a long-term disability. And they tried to put me on 3 pills. Plus, they wanted to put me on anxiety pills. And I have addiction issues. And I was like, I'm not going to start another addiction. And I decided to completely change my life. And so I got help from like a mental health. I got group therapy. I changed the way I eat. I got sober. I started exercising and really working on mindfulness and neuroplasticity and being aware of what's going on in my body. And so by doing all that, I really lost a lot of faith in the medical industry. And so I kept reading and I kept getting healthier and healthier by doing pretty much exactly the opposite of what I was being told to do. And so for me, that's how I started really on my journey of not being so sure about the medical industry that I was working in. And so in March, when the lockdowns came, it was really weird for me because I was like, I work in a nursing home. And if you work in a nursing home, you can tell that the government really doesn't care about these people. I mean, they eat powdered eggs, canned mandarin, and like Kool-Aid, you know? So that was a really big alarm for me. And so I started really looking into things, and I quickly saw that we were being lied to. And so for me, that's when I kind of started speaking out. And so that's how it went for me. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to talk about how I got fired and all that, but that's my story of how I got to speaking out.
Yeah. I think we should come to that for consequences, because I know there's a lot of people who are concerned. They're medical professionals and they see something's not right, but they're concerned about what the consequences would be. But you know, there could be other options. You know, you don't have to be stuck in a system that's not supportive, and there's possibilities out there. So we'll come back to that, but let's go to you, Kristen, and you could tell us your story about how you got into this.
I've been a nurse for 14 years, primarily in the NICU, so neonatal intensive care unit. with a background in pediatrics as well. And when my son was born, I was off for my year maternity leave, and it allowed me the opportunity to be removed from the hospital setting. And I had that year to kind of like get back to who I was before I became a nurse. And, you know, I loved being outdoors and nature and food and all these things. So I started taking a lot of workshops and doing a lot of reading as well. I started, because my son would always fall asleep in my arms, and he was my only one at the time, so I let him. And so I ended up just watching a lot of documentaries while he slept, and, you know, like Food Inc. and about GMOs and all like Michael Pollan's amazing documentaries. And I just started uncovering a lot of the corruption that was happening in the food industry. And that kind of pushed me to want to learn more. And I went back to school and about 6 years ago to become a holistic nutritionist. And that's when all the light bulb moments went off for me. I realized what was missing in healthcare, what was missing, you know, that we learned about in nursing. Like we just kind of look at the physical body and we look at illness and how to treat this illness and the symptoms. And then learning about like the mind, the body, spirit, and then how we're so complex and amazing beings. It just really opened my eyes. So I started peeling back more layers and layers. And, you know, when I was very concerned about, not concerned, but aware of what I was eating and what my children were eating. And that led me to being, you know, what we were putting on our skin, what products, same with like what products were in our home. And then when you start looking at all those ingredients and those chemicals, like if I'm so concerned about putting them on my body or consuming them, then what about am I doing, you know, with immunizations or medication and that stuff. So it was like, that was just another area that I decided to research as well. It just, you kind of like go through one door, but then you realize like all these things are actually all connected. Mm-hmm. And I was realizing, you know, working with babies and mothers and watching kind of, you know, similar situations happen, just the lack of education that was happening, you know, around preventative care or about, you know, products being used or food or, you know, medical treatments, you know. And so I started learning about like iatrogenic illness, you know, so illness caused by medical treatments. And yeah, it just really opened my eyes, and I just started, you know, speaking up about it, which led again, like what Sarah said, when all the news was starting about Wuhan in December, I knew it was nothing then. And, you know, we should start being preventative. And, you know, when the lockdowns came in March, I was very vocal and have not stopped speaking up about what was happening, just because I just saw the harms that were happening all around us on all levels, like with the parents in the NICU, with the babies, and then our own children, with society, with community, and just the devastating effects it was having all around.
Yeah. So you both actually work with two spectrums of our most vulnerable in society. You've got the children and pregnant mothers, and then you have the elderly. So I wonder if you could talk about what you've seen happen to, maybe Sarah, we could go with you, what you've seen happen with the elderly since all of this started with the lockdowns.
Well, obviously, when you think of residents in a nursing home, you know that they don't have much left. And, you know, it's their last stop. And the only thing that really brings them back up, I mean, some activities will for a minute, but really the only thing that they look forward to is their loved ones. And so, and some more than others. So they're like, I've literally had a resident that died of a heart attack within a week. Because she was someone that needed her daughter every day. She would ask every 5 minutes. She had a little bit of dementia, and she had heart problems, and it was too much for her. She only, like literally within 1 week. And so with other people, you can see the same thing. You can see the anxiety building up, but after a few months, you can also see failure to thrive. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them no longer have anything to live. Even the ones that don't know and are demented, something inside of them knows that they've been abandoned. And so you see a lot of people, failure to thrive. But there's also the fact that we've been locking them down, and they're doing these testings. And when they do these testings and someone is positive, even if they have no symptoms, even if it's a staff, they will shut down the floor or the building. And so that means that each resident now has, not only doesn't have their families to look forward to, but they're locked up in their rooms. They will eat there. Everything is done in there. They can't come out. And, you know, you can tell, like, even the people, like, if someone was able to walk before the 2 weeks with a walker, well, often they can't anymore. And they had falls in their rooms because they don't have the same supervision. And so they lose, they deteriorate. You know, it's really tragic. It's really tragic.
I came across the information that with nursing homes and they weren't built to provide like 24/7 cares to all residents. They were sort of built with the consideration that the loved ones would be there to come and provide a bit of the care as well. They come for visits, they give them that socialization, they'll bring gifts, sometimes they'll bring like fruit and that sort of thing. So it seems like that was the design set up. They weren't really set up so that, you know, you could have people just sit in their rooms and almost like a hospital ward in a way with no visitors.
Yeah. Right. It's like, yeah, they're in prison and they want to get out. They want to get out and they can't. And it's like heartbreaking to see when they actually had the outside visits. I mean, finally, after 7 months, they were able to, some family members were able to do a testing and come and visit, but they have to be, after not seeing each other for 6, 7, 8 months, they have to be apart. The family member has to wear the mask. There's the distancing, and there you cannot touch each other. And there's someone standing in between you as a guard, so that if you do break the rules, then it's over and you lose your visit. And it's heartbreaking to see because a lot of the residents don't understand that. A lot of them can't hear. They're just heartbroken. It's like abandonment. It's very difficult, just heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I think,
and a lot of them couldn't come for visits because the visits would make it worse. They would be so agitated after the visits that families had to decide not to come.
Yeah, that's really horrible. And I think, you know, it's interesting to note that a lot of what people were talking about prior to the measures, the COVID measures, I remember the stories coming out about how deadly loneliness was, especially for the elderly. And that seemed to be a big story, like the past couple of years. They kept emphasizing how much of our elderly are isolated and they're dying from loneliness. They said it's as deadly as smoking or worse.
Yes.
But so I'm not sure, like where does this, you know, come into the balance for public health considerations for them? Yeah.
That's why I had a big alarm ring in my head.
Yeah.
They're not doing this for their good. That's for sure. Because we're coming in and out. I could have went wherever I want and I was coming in and out. They hired volunteers to help us. Like the family could have been coming in and helping us like they always do. And, you know, they know their family members better. So when something's not right, they can help us through that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kristen, could you tell us about some of what you were able to see?
Yeah, it was definitely concerning with the visitor restrictions that started with that. And well, actually, first I'll backtrack. They're preparing for like the worst. So they closed down an entire gynecology wing that they were going to use for COVID overflow. And so that would mean like, you know, canceling inpatient surgeries or day surgeries or things like that, or anything with, you know, for women's health. And they closed all that down and it remained empty. It never once got used. They warned all our respiratory therapists that they would have to probably get floated down to adult ICU when things got really busy. Our respiratory therapists never left our unit. They never had to get floated anywhere because it never got busy down there. And so that was kind of like one of the first things, like noticing just these like closures of units for overflow and wanting to float staff, and that never happened. And then the visitor restrictions came in place where, you know, we work with micro preemies, so 23 weeks and up, and it's a very scary, devastating time for parents to go through. There's a lot to grieve. They have to grieve, you know, others grieve their pregnancy. for, not coming to term. They grieve the labor, then obviously their child, just like everything that's happening. But now they're only allowed one parent at the bedside within 24 hours. And so they're doing this alone. And we try to be there as much as we can, but we're not their support person, right? There's only so much that we can do. We can, listen and sit with them, but sometimes, the unit can be busy and our time can be pulled away, and they're just there alone. And even with mothers that are on the antenatal unit, that's kind of the high risk pregnancy side where, mothers can end up there for weeks, if not months at a time on bed rest to be observed. And again, only one visitor once per person in the entire time that they're there. So they have to pick one person and that person stays the same throughout their entire stay. And sometimes that they would go without seeing their own children. And that would be the same with, parents at the bedside. And then fathers were not allowed into the C-section, so into the OR. So if moms were, having to have a C-section, fathers were not allowed in. But meanwhile, there's like 8 hospital staff in there, and they wouldn't allow dad to come in to be the support. So dad would miss the birth of their baby, and then also not being able to be there to support their partner. So there's just a lot of moments like that. And now the masking in the unit with, hospital staff, like we're fully visor, mask, everything. And then parents are asked to do the same mask. And, there's research that's been done on it's called the still face experiment. And it's fascinating, right? Because within 2 minutes of a parent having a blank gaze or stare at a baby, the baby reacts very negatively, like immediately, to this still face where there's no engagement. And I just think the amount of times that parents are with their baby in the unit, that's all the baby can see for, just this covered up mask. And same with hospital staff, same with everything. Like we're creating like this, we're stealing emotions and just that connection. We're removing connection. And I noticed that even when as a nurse, and I want to provide compassion, and I'm trying to, show them and support them. And I feel like I'm trying to do extra with my eyes, but I feel like even communicating was so much harder for me to communicate with the parents. And babies can only see when they're first born, like 8 inches. Like that's to see from like, from mother's like breast to face, and that's all they can see. And now they're seeing, just eyes, and I don't know. And there's a lot actually now going on too with new COVID restrictions where they want babies to get tested to see if they're positive for COVID. They want babies, if mom tests positive, then they're looking at like removing baby from mom. Mom has to now wash herself with like soap and water every time she wants to breastfeed. Then if mom's not breastfeeding, then baby has to stay like 2 meters away. Like they're really removing all sorts of bonding moments and connection and these innate natural relationships and instincts that babies and mothers and need. And it is totally being severed and removed. And yeah.
A couple of things I want to ask you about with that. And one is, say with the father who can't come in, or the other parent who can't come in for the C-section. I wonder why that is. If the other person, it's just one more person, and normally if that happens, they have to cover up too, right? Because you're in an operating room. So it's not like they wouldn't be wearing PPE, right? That protective equipment and be all geared up. So it doesn't kind of make sense. Nope. I don't know.
It does not.
Yeah. And then one of the other things you mentioned with the moms having to wash. I wonder if you could talk about what you know about the mother's microbiome and the health of the infant and how that develops their immune system from exposure to that. Because it seems kind of counterintuitive to try to be so sterilized, when that's part of what helps to build your resistance to any type of illness.
Yeah, absolutely. So the baby's gut is, I don't want to use the word sterile because we're not sterile beings. But the baby, when the baby's being born, its first kind of lining occurrence with, bacteria is going through the vaginal canal and being birthed. And that's where the baby first gets, its first kind of layer of it's bacteria, the microbiome, and what first lines the baby's gut. It is so important. It's so important now that they're realizing with C-sections that babies are missing this initial process that, doctors that are aware or midwives are getting, are wiping mom like a vaginal canal and wiping it on the baby to kind of help, get that initial bacteria on baby. And again, skin to skin is so important. And this is where, babies connect with their mothers and build their microbiome, build up that bacteria, start building their immune system and communications, like everything. And mothers, pass all of that on. It's protective. It's vital. Like, we're not meant to be sterile beings. And the whole idea that they've turned birth into a medical intervention and a treatment and in the sterile atmosphere is a little bit kind of absurd. Like, it's not how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's just so important that babies need that connection with mothers, and they need to bond, and they need, the bacteria to build up their microbiome. They need that to be passed on from mom. And again, we're removing that as well. We're trying to make things too sterile. And when things are too sterile, it leads to sickness and an illness and a weakened immune system, right? Like, we know that even like nature, I say, like, nature has all the answers. You look at monocropping, for example. They use pesticides because it's so vulnerable to insects and things coming in and ravaging the fields. But if you had a biodiverse field, insects might come and take a little bit here and a little bit there, but the overall growth of the garden and the vegetables is immense. Like, it's abundant. So things thrive in biodiversity just as much as humans need biodiversity in our microbiome, in our bacteria, in our gut. And we get that from interaction and connection, and from people, from humans, from outside, from everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually, I researched a bit into the microbiome at the start of this, a bit more to see what the newest findings were. And it's really interesting. For the audience, like, the microbiome, that's not, you've got bacteria, you've got fungi, you've got viruses, right? Whatever you want to call them. And what's really fascinating about it is that if you've got a healthy community, that it will actually defend you from anything that would come from the outside that your body says, no, this isn't going to work for us. So you've got all these layers, like your skin, it's all over the place. It's actually, it reaches out around you in your personal space. And how cool is that?
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I always try to say, like, remind people that we're actually more bacteria than we are human cells by like 100. We have 100 times, like trillion or something, 100 trillion times more bacteria cells. It's crazy. Yeah. And bacteria, just like it does in nature, communicates, and it communicates with, each other. And it's what, creates all our catalysts in our body, like all these, functions, like it makes it, it's how our body functions on these little guys. And now we're trying to kill them all off.
Yeah, maybe we can touch on at the end sort of this type of knowledge and this preventative approach where we recognize how powerful the human body is, and we'll get to that. But I want to touch on now, as nurses, what were you taught regarding medical ethics, informed consent, patient care, and patient rights? So whoever wants to go first for that one.
Well, I'll start if that's okay, Sarah.
Yeah, you're good at this.
We were taught it. We were taught that, patients need informed consent, to provide, all like medical transparency, to provide them all the right information, to be advocates for our patient. Like, we were taught to do these things, and we were taught about the 4 principle ethics, but it only if it fits into a certain narrative. So it's very fascinating because, if you look up this, the College of Nurses of Ontario, because that's where Sarah and I are both from, if you look up the standards, it is very specific that nurses need to be critical thinkers. Mm-hmm. Nurses need to be advocates. Nurses need to follow best practice evidence. And we need to do all these things. But only if it supports the one-sided narrative. As soon as you start critically thinking and asking questions and following evidence outside of the narrative, then that's a no-go. As soon as you start advocating for your patients for alternative care or other treatment or, other things, that Sarah herself went through, that's a no-no. So it's very contradictive and hypocritical, I would say, and polarizing. So they teach us to do all these things, but it comes with a huge but. Yeah.
And what do they define as informed consent? What is that?
Well, the definition should be very critically looking at all sides of a situation. So whether it's a surgery, you should hear all about the reasons why the surgery is necessary and the pros that go along with it. But then with that, these are all the risks. These are all the consequences. This could be the outcome. This is what you're going to have to live with after the surgery. And I feel like for the most part, when it comes to surgeries and things like that, they actually do a pretty good job of laying out the risk versus benefit analysis. I feel like in my situation, I've seen that done like fairly well. However, when it comes to medication and especially immunizations, they kind of just say like, here you are, you need this in order to do this. These will be the side effects, but it's worth it so you can kind of do this. So it's not really that clear. And then with immunization specifically, like it is non-existent. It is very biased when they hand out like the informed consent. It's like, okay, this is why you need it. This is why it's necessary. You might experience a sore arm or something here, and they lay out very minimal side effects, but the whole picture is definitely not presented. You don't get to look at an insert. You don't really get to hear all the risks. You don't get to look at all, you don't hear about the fatalities. You don't hear about the injuries. You don't really get the whole picture at all, I would say.
Yeah. So technically, would that count as informed consent?
No, it's not. It really doesn't happen. And as a nurse, I would say what was very difficult for me, especially because working with babies and parents, I just wanted to be able to educate, and I wanted to give them the whole picture. I wanted to provide them all the information necessary on both sides so they could come in and make a very confident, educated decision, whatever that might be, whether it's a yes, whether it's a no. I wanted them to be able to make it confidently for themselves, not because they were told to, not because they were told is the right thing, not because they feared what might happen if they didn't. I wanted them to be very confident. And unfortunately, I am not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to give them the whole story. I'm not allowed to show them that another side exists. I was not allowed to actually give them proper informed consent. And I felt that as a nurse, I was really failing on my part, that I was being prevented from doing what I was supposed to be doing for them.
Yeah. Do you want to go into any of that, Sarah?
Sure. What was the actual question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What are nurses taught about medical ethics, informed consent, and then as well patient care and patient rights?
Oh, well, definitely the same thing as Kristen. Like people are supposed to know what they're getting into and make their own choices. And, we're not allowed to do that. Even us as nurses, like I had no idea how vaccines worked before the pandemic. And now I know how they work. And I took all the vaccine, like I always took all the vaccines, even though I knew that I was like, the flu vaccine doesn't work. Like you hear a lot of things, and you start looking into it. But I was just like, I'm strong, I'm really healthy right now. What is it gonna do? But now I'm like, oh my God, like I took the flu shot every year. Like, what if that's part of why I have fibromyalgia? A lot of nurses have neurological issues, right? So we're not being told the truth. And so, and like Kristen said, we can't even inform people properly. And then what happens is that, like me, I'm sure Kristen too, most nurses, we get into the field because we care and we do not want to do any harm. And like, if you have any type of critical thinking at this point, you are doing harm. Like, we can't work. I don't want to go back to You know, I've been trying to get out of that industry for a few years now, trying to build my own thing. I wanted to help survivors with mental health problems. And, you know, it was kind of hard, but now that they got me out, I'm going to do everything I can to work. And we want to change the system. We want to do preventative care and health, natural health and all that. Sorry, I went totally off your question, but
That's
it's
fine.
pretty much the same answer as Kristen. Like I said, even nurses, doctors, we're not informed. Doctors don't know anything about vaccines. They get half a day of training to 1 day max. Like, this is how you do it. And this one is like the schedule and stuff, but not what's in it, what it really does, you know, what they're hiding, because it's been said that only 1% of vaccine injuries are being reported.
Yeah, that's right.
And even those are censored. So it's like, oh my God, it's a lot worse than we thought.
Yeah.
And Sarah, you brought up a really good point, if I can add to that too, because like as nurses and healthcare professionals, I mean, if we're not informed ourselves, how are we actually supposed to be, you know, providing informed consent? And a lot of us that, you know, speak up, it's because we have had to do like our own research, and we've dove in and done like an immense amount of reading and research and looked at studies and all these things. Like, you know, it's not like one day we just decide, oh, we don't believe in this. It's because like we were taught to believe all these things. This is, you know, this was science. This is what you do. This is how you protect the population. This is how you know, keep people safe. You do all these things, and this is how you like keep your children alive, and you know, all that. It's quite heavy. So for a long time, you know, you don't even think there's anything else to research. You're just, you know, you're given everything that you need to know. And it's like, why even bother? Like, this is the science. This is what I have to do. So for anyone that is speaking out, had to go outside of, you know, your own practice and find your own empowerment and do your own research and find knowledge and keep kind of like digging in. So Sarah brought a good point. Like, if you're not informed yourself, you're not going to be able to provide informed consent. And it's unfortunate that we have to search it ourselves, and you need some kind of triggering moment. Something happens that even pushes you to want to look for it, because that's not even encouraged to do your own research.
Yeah, that's a huge thing in the broad spectrum of education, this concept of learned helplessness, and the idea of teaching you what to think, but not how to think. If you could teach somebody how to think, you don't have to give them information, because they're going to try to seek it for themselves, you know, and they'll be able to say, well, I'm going to think critically about this. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to see, you know, which is going to apply best for me, kind of thing. So let's talk specifically about the children. What are your concerns regarding the effect of the COVID measures on children? So we've talked a bit about infants and the still phase, but what are your concerns for both of you that you've kind of, and I know Sarah with like mental health as well. What are you seeing for these kids who are having to stay away from their friends, social distance, not have physical contact, wear a mask on their face, sometimes all day long in school, go through conditioning of being fearful that even though you're not sick, you could kill your grandmother, you know, or that sort of thing. So what would you like to say about that?
Can I start, Kristen?
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I'm extremely concerned and triggered by this. As someone who, so when I started learning about that I had fibromyalgia and working on myself, I started reading a lot on trauma, because I realized that all of my problems came from things I hadn't resolved in my childhood. And so I learned a lot about trauma, and what we're doing is that we're traumatizing all our children, like seriously, and this will have serious repercussions. This generation of kids are going to have so many mental health issues, and we're seeing a lot of now younger kids, 6, 7, 8, suicidal, killing themselves. And so from that aspect, it's terrible, but from all other aspects too. I mean, lack of oxygen when you're growing, your brain is developing. And so lack of oxygen, it will not sorry, English is my third language. It will not develop as well. So there's that kind of issues. Obviously fear, trauma, and all that. And there was one more thing I wanted to say. So there's the oxygen, and also, like, as a sexual abuse survivor who brings awareness on sexual abuse, I mean, you can't recognize kids very well, or you can't recognize adults very well. And so it's kind of dangerous in that way too. You can't identify them as well. But really, physiologically and mentally, huge problems. It's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kristen, do you have anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I have strong feelings about this. So my kids are young, and so I've been fighting against all this from the start for them too, and for all children, and for our community. And I first started speaking out at City Hall against like masks on children. There's no evidence to support it, like, at all. We know kids are not at risk, and we are forcing this. That's the statement, like, killing grandma, like, that's a really harsh thing to say. That's a really heavy thing to put on like a 4 or 5-year-old, or any age to wear, like, to carry that around with them, like, that is heavy. That the fear that they have to now fear themselves, they could be dangerous, or they have to fear another child. We're removing play. We're removing joy. We're removing facial recognition, whether that's emotions or anything. Speech. I know a lot of kids, speech pathologists, are noticing a big issue with that. Like, how do you teach another language? How do you teach speech if you can't see, like, movements? Tone is another one. Like, I realize, like, how much I even rely on lip reading. And you put, like, the mask on, and how difficult it is to actually hear and communicate with someone. So communication skills are already being jeopardized, with screens and everything else. And then now we've just added in a whole other layer of, like, there's no communication or interaction going to be happening. It's dehumanizing, and just the psychological damages. Like, I can't even comprehend what's going to come out of this. And I get emails all the time from parents, because I've been working on this lawsuit for masks on children at schools, and the emails coming in, like Sarah mentioned, like 6-year-olds, imitating or trying to not cut themselves with, like, credit cards. The pictures that I have seen of kids drawing, like, this 15-year-old boy drew this picture of silhouettes with a mask on, because he's like, they stole my face, they stole my emotions, they stole my, and it was like all these, like, just plain silhouettes of, like, and then they had a saying of, like, what did they steal? These kids being very affected by this, and just, like, yes, the oxygen, then the lack of oxygen, but then also the amount of CO2 that they're breathing in is also detrimental. And just what we're teaching them. We're teaching them to fear all this stuff, like the chemicals, the sterilization. You have to wash everything, wash the surface, like, put on the hand sanitizer. And we're killing the microbiome. We're teaching them that everything is scary and germs are everywhere. And we're just not allowing kids to be kids. And to me, it is heartbreaking. I know so many families that are alone. They haven't been able to find support with other parents that are like-minded with their kids to play. I know some kids that have not played with another child in a year. Like, these things are detrimental. Like, I don't know how, unless they have, like, huge support coming forward, I don't know how they're going to kind of recover from all this. And like Sarah talked about it, like the trauma. I was going to say Sick Kids. That's what it was. Sick Kids line. They had maybe 1 million calls, which is a lot of mental health. And I think it's gone up to 4 point something now. It's increased over the year. So in a year, it's increased by over 3 million. Eating disorders are on a high. And Sarah touched on suicides. That's actually been increasing, like, high school kids. I don't know, like, this is huge. And I don't know how anyone can ignore this or justify lockdowns when they see what is happening to the children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Like, I've noticed with growing up myself, and I find it funny how, like, when people become adults, it's almost like they forgot how it was to be a child. And for a child, a year is so long. Like it's really intense because they're really fully present, right? There's um, there's a reason why kids like have these stronger emotional reactions too, because it's new, it's very intense. Like if you have an issue with your friend, it's so intense for a kid. Like, you know, falling out with a friend could be, it can be very traumatic for children. And you have this issue which is just severely affecting them. And not even, there's the overt things, but the subconscious. You know, if people step away from you while you're walking on the sidewalk, I mean, um, what message does that send? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the solutions,
Mm-hmm.
because this is, you know, it's a mess, and it's a mess for our children. It's a mess for the elderly. The people that the most vulnerable are the ones we should be treating with respect and love and compassion, in a free society, right? So let's talk about Canadian frontline nurses. How did this start? What's your mission and who's involved?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it started, I think we all started individually speaking up. So I know I saw Erin Marie from New York. She started, she did an expose on what was happening in New York back in May. I've been following her and so inspired by her bravery and courage to bring that to the public. Then there was Nicole Siratek, same thing. She went viral in what she was experiencing in New York and so inspired. I had been speaking out, and then I saw Sarah speak out in Toronto. I was like, yes, another Toronto nurse. And so I connected with Sarah right away, which was amazing. And then kind of like slowly, anytime I saw a nurse speak out, I was like, you know, trying to reach out. Sarah had a massive platform that I'm sure she'll talk about on how she got connected with people. And then when my first media slander came out, I messaged Erin and kind of was like, you know, is there anything that we can do? And I guess for a while, she had been trying to form a group of nurses for, you know, since the spring. And so it had been taking a long time. She's like, I'm trying to organize a summit. Are you interested? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, I have some other nurses that would be too. So like Sarah and a couple others, and you know, we tried to bring everyone together. And that's how, like in a short summary, formed the Global Frontline Nurses. And we all traveled together to DC on January 6th to speak as a collective, to speak together about all our concerns that we were seeing. And then from that, Sarah and I did a chapter. Things are going to be changing. So I think, yeah, we're going to kind of like blend more, because we just had a discussion last night about how we really need to make sure that our voices are united. But we came back to do our Canadian expose, the press conference release. And so we did start Canadian Frontline Nurses as like a chapter from the Global Frontline Nurses. But I think we're going to be kind of meshing back into the global. So, you know, transition things you learn as you go, right? We just kind of don't want, we've seen, you know, we've seen things happen within the movement, right? Of different groups kind of like doing their own thing here and going there and separating and doing that. And we definitely don't want that to happen. We just want more voices united. We want to be stronger. We want to come together. So we're kind of learning as we go how to remain strong and stick together. So there might be some small changes moving forward in a little bit, but knowing that we're still going to be like connected under Global Frontline Nurses, and we're still going to be strong and uniting together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know, I don't know, I think Erin's video is still out. I think it was Journeyman Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
There was a recording, and she also has now a book out, so people can read about it too.
Her book is so good. I've read that so quickly. It's awesome. So I highly recommend everyone grab Erin's book. It's The Undercover Nurse.
Yeah, it is very disturbing. I haven't read the book, but when the video, just to see the lack of empathy and just, it's kind of like going into a place and people are just apathetic, and it's like you're almost sent there to die, and that's what they expect, and so they're not going to do anything for you. Kind of, it's like, I think like Nicole said, is like being in the Twilight Zone. Yeah. But so you're together with Global Frontline Nurses, and there's this kind of there's this movement to create that mass of nurses, right? To do some. So what's the mission of this? Is is it for raising awareness? Is there going to be an action that anybody wants to take? I know you did the press conference, which was awesome, and I'm gonna link the to the video there. So what's your mission?
Mm-hmm. I was like waiting. I was like, I talk too much, but do you want to say it, Sarah? Or...
I'm like, Kristen's going to take this one. I don't mind, but
yeah,
I
go
think
for
you
it.
say it better than I do. For me, it's just that we want to unite as many of us as possible. We want to organize. We want to educate ourselves, speak out, and definitely, where possible, do some action.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, for example, this petition that I'm having a real hard time with, but it's coming, but it's back into the making now. Like, we're working on a petition that we want to bring to the table for Canadian nurses to protect whistleblowers, because in the States they have something called the False Claims Act, and here we have nothing. And as you can see, me and Kirsten's license are under investigation, you know, for informing people of their rights. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So we're working on that. And, you know, definitely we want to work with more people. Like, we have more doctors working with us now, and we're just trying to unite with anyone, you know, any way that we can help and make a difference, we will. We're looking for some nurses to bring in evidence. So all kinds of different ways that people can help.
Mm-hmm. I think the bigger vision too is getting back to ethics, right? There's the 4 principal ethics of, and I don't know why I get tongue tied, so don't mind me, but benevolence, see, Sarah, I can't say it either.
Great, it's not just me.
No, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice, right? Those are the 4 principal ethics. And we are so far removed from those ethics right now that I don't even think people even know what the 4 principal ethics are or what they even mean. So yes, we should not be doing any harm, but we also have to do good. Yeah. And, you know, we have to have justice, and we need to have autonomy over our bodies, and that's patients having autonomy over themselves. And so when we look back at the situations being done right now with healthcare, with the lockdowns, with treatments, like, are we actually following and asking ourselves, like, are we following these 4 principal ethics? And I think if we stepped back and looked at them and really thought about what they all meant, I would think that we're not following most of them with a lot of things that we do. And nurses forget that we should never follow policy. We should always follow ethics. So Nazi, you know, in Germany, Nazi nurses followed policy. And, you know, there was fallout from that. You know, we talk about the Nuremberg Code. It's quite relevant now. I don't think people realize how relevant it actually is. But our mission is to get back to the 4 principal ethics, to provide medical transparency, informed consent, and just kind of transform healthcare. I mean, I guess for me, what I would like to see is just a more rounded approach where we see the individual as a whole, where we see them as mind, body, spirit, where we look at alternative methods, where we look at everything and come together to make the best possible unique plan for this unique individual, because there's no blanket treatment for anyone. We're all unique individuals. We're all unique makeup, genetics, everything. So there's no one blanket treatment can treat one, like everyone. So I would love to see more individualized planning, getting more to the root, having more alternative methods come forward that, you know, are more widely used. And I don't know. I mean, that's, I think, kind of my selfish big vision, but I think a lot of us are kind of on that same page.
Yeah, no. I'm totally with Kristen, and I'm following her in her mission for sure. We're all going there together.
Yeah.
We're not going back into this system.
No, the system is not sustainable. It is not making people healthy, because the system is meant to make money, and it's built on sick care. It's built on pharmaceuticals, and it is built on profits. And so we would love to move away from a profit system of sick care and actually get into true health and well-being, you know, like on something that's sustainable. Like, herbs are awesome. Plants are awesome. Mindset is huge. Lifestyle changes. Like, look at Sarah has an incredible story of what she did without the medical system's help. Like, she's totally, like, you know, healed herself. Essentially, like, our minds are so powerful. I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time. It's just like everything that we need is like in here. And Dr. Bruce Lipton is another one. Like, we are very complex, amazing, strong beings. And I think people don't realize how powerful and amazing we truly are when given the right tools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. And I think it's interesting what you said about nurses following their ethics versus policy. And what I found interesting is the argument that pops up, like for the Nuremberg Code or for medical ethics, like the Canadian Medical Association, they include in there that for the autonomy of the persons, that you never do anything that violates human rights. I mean, you know, it's interesting, but the argument that comes up is that, oh, those are just guidelines. They're not people, there's no like they're not bound by that. And then the subconscious idea then comes that you as a patient have no recourse if those ethics are violated by a medical professional. But is that really the case, that there's nothing that anybody can do if they're treated unethically?
I mean, there's lots you can do. They make it very difficult.
Mhm.
For sure. They've built the system that way to protect themselves, but there's definitely things that they can do. It's not easy, but there's patient relations, there is litigation, there are, there's lots that can be done, but they definitely don't make it easy.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of work. And sometimes I think a lot of people just find it's, I don't know, for lack of a better word, not worth that hassle, but because they've built the system this way on purpose
Right.
to protect themselves. And what's interesting enough, like I just learned this in the last 6 months, is that 40% of doctors don't even take the oath. The oath is optional.
Wow.
Like the Hippocratic oath to do no harm is optional, and 40% don't take it.
Mhm.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, what are they bound by?
Yeah, what's the impetus going into the profession? But
Mhm.
yeah, so I know that you're both working on your own things now, because you haven't really been allowed to, I guess, continue to do your work as nurses. So I want to talk about how communities, there are so many of us out there, and especially where you guys are in Ontario and Toronto area, there's a lot of people out there who are moving away from this whole narrative. They've got, you know, it's their family, their kids, they don't want to have anything to do with it. How can they support you? If you want to talk about, I know you mentioned, Kristen, you are a holistic practitioner, and Sarah, you were talking about something with mental health, and you have something going on there. So why don't you tell us what you guys are working on?
Mhm. Go for it, Sarah. Yeah.
Okay. I was working on this actually before, because as I said, when I figured out that the medical industry was not what I thought it was, and I kept looking into it, and the more I looked, the healthier I got. Like the more far away I got from it, the healthier I got. But as I got better, because I think a lot of people don't realize that when your mental health is not good, at some point physically it's going to catch up. And I think a lot of people don't know that, and then just keep taking pills, and it just gets worse and worse, and you never get better. And so it went so well for me just by learning a few tools and putting them into practice, like boundaries. I didn't know what that was. I didn't learn that as a kid. Or going back and reconnecting with my inner child, like going back and studying myself, and also being in a group and seeing that other people had the same shameful ways of dealing with it. It kind of takes away the shame. And like I started healing because of these groups and because I had these tools. And so I decided that I was going to share it with the world, because I was lucky enough to have the Gatehouse, which is a safe place for adult survivors of sexual abuse in my city, but it's the only one in Canada, and it's renowned internationally, and it's the only one also for male. So a lot of people don't have access to it. So I put it online, and I kind of share my story, my truths, my findings and stuff like that, and help others. And at some point, I've started working on some online course. So I have How to Protect Your Kids from Sexual Abuse, but I was then working on programs for survivors. But then all this happened, and I kind of like stopped doing. because that's what I want to do. I realize that I'm a nurse in an industry that drugs us, and so many people die from these drugs every year. And these drugs are not helping them. It's just a Band-Aid. And we know what to do. We need to go back. We need to look. We need to live in our truth. We need to be able to, put boundaries. We need to be able to parent the things that our inner child didn't have. We need to be able to do all these things. And if you do all these things, you start loving yourself and you start taking better care of yourself and you get better. And that's not what the medical industry is doing. And so that's what I want to do. So this is why I started Lighting Up Dark Corners.
Lighting Up Dark Corners. And is there a website for that? Or
yes, it's www.lightingupdarkcorners.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you offer and when we were talking about like with the kids and the elderly, is there anything that you might be working on geared towards them?
I'm not sure what you mean. Like mentally?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it also works with kids. I haven't really gotten into it because, like I said, I was building this, but then I realized that I had more healing to do. so I kind of like, it's kind of right when the pandemic hit is when I was actually ready. And so I haven't really gotten to it. I've been really looking at adults, but that's a great, and definitely older people. I mean, this works with anybody. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. It's open for anyone.
All right, we'll have the link at the in the description of the video so people can go and have a look there.
Thank you.
So Kristen, how about you? I think I got you on mute.
That was me, sorry. Before all this started, I was kind of working on my exit plan to get into health, and I had a business that just kind of went on pause, but it's still there. It was called Sweaty Successful Moms. And our mission was, it's to raise leaders who are wholeheartedly connected to the earth. And we believe that when moms live a life with peace and passion, they teach their children to lead with their hearts and change the world. And so we created a program called The Meaningful More, which is a 3-month journey that looks at mind, body, spirit, and it helps you fully connect to who you are and be confident in who you are and find, become empowered in your unique self, and encourage you to be like, to shine, to be uniquely you, whatever that looks like. And when moms are able to do that, because we usually work with moms, it trickles down to the children. And that's where we see strong, resilient, free-thinking children. So, and that's what we have been working on prior to all this as well. Kind of my advocacy role with nursing kind of took over a little bit, but it's still very much there. It is a beautiful program that we have created, and we've seen a lot of results with it. And my focus for myself with nutrition is I teach courses on immune systems for healthy kids. So I like to focus on the kids and families. I talk about your edible backyard. So teaching people about foraging and edible stuff that is you can find just like outside in your own backyard, which is amazing because there's actually quite a bit. And then I do a course on germ theory versus terrain. So those are the things that I'm kind of working on. And of course, you can find us at Global Frontline Nurses. Mm-hmm. So globalfrontlinenurses.com, canadianfrontlinenurses.ca, and we are accepting donations to help us continue in our advocacy role as well. So we're looking at a trip to BC on February 20th. That'll be our next speaking engagement. So we're looking for help to get there so we can speak on the West Coast. I think that's really exciting. We're looking forward to meeting a lot of people there. And then our next one with the Global Frontline Nurses will be March 13th, I believe, getting ready to announce that in front of the CDC in Atlanta is going to be another huge event. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. And before I show everybody your website so that they can go check it out, there's one thing I know that I've seen this question pop up a lot. So this is for you, Kristen. There's a lot of pregnant mothers who were worried about going into hospital to give birth. And I wonder if you know of any options for them. And if that's like, if there's something available for them, because they're just terrified that they would have to go in there and that they won't be able to see anybody. And then they're going to have to take a test when they don't want to, and all of that stuff. And that's very stressful, for a
It's
pregnant
so
mom.
stressful. Yes. So this one is huge right now, and one that's been very upsetting for me too to watch and see, especially like a masking during labor. Like, are you kidding me? So definitely know your rights. Ask for the policies within the hospital, know your human rights as well, and know the provincial bylaws, and be ready to stand firm in your ground, in your choices, and know that no medical treatment can be refused, and you are allowed to, not participate in certain medical treatment, whether you need to sign a paper, you do not need to take a test, you do not need to wear a mask, you do not need to do all these things, and just and be firm and ask the hospital to provide policy and to provide all this, but then also back it up with your provincial bylaw, because usually I think each one has an exemption in there, and so on. But an amazing resource, a woman I am proud that I've started to get to know, is Catherine Wand. And she's been doing interviews with Randy Hillier. She just released an interview with Tamara of Rebel News. She has been fighting this so hard. She's a force. She's so well spoken. She has all of this documented, and emails that she's sending to the hospital, because she's about, I want to say 8 months pregnant now. And by no means is she following along with any of this. So she's a force. So if any mothers need extra inspiration or help, follow her videos. She did an amazing interview with Randy Hillier, as well with Tamara of Rebel News. So awesome. Catherine Wand is her name, and she's fighting this.
Awesome. So I'm going to share now. I'll get up your website here so people can have a look, and I'm going to provide the links in the chat. All right, so this is their official press conference. You can search for it on YouTube. You can put in Canadian Frontline Nurses Press Conference. I'll also provide the link. And this is their home website, Canadian Frontline Nurses here. And like Kristen mentioned, you can go to the donate button and help support them in that way. And I've also got their Global Frontline Nurses. So we'll have that link as well, globalfrontlinenurses.com. And as well, you can donate there. If you are a nurse, consider joining them. And I think last time I spoke to you, I think it was Kristen, if people want to remain anonymous, they can do that. Is that right?
Yeah. Can you actually, I always forget about this because it's new. Can you go back to the Global Frontline Nurses?
Yeah,
one?
Sure. I'll set that up now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our website designer would be so disappointed in me if I didn't remind him about this.
All right. So what's up?
Okay. So right there where it says forum.
Okay.
So in that forum, there's a place where there's a separate place for members. So you can you can log into our website. We actually have a back door for nurses to sign up and register. So it's safe. It's a place only for nurses. So you're protected in your conversations and things that you put on there. So you can see it's a login specific to members, and you get vetted in who can join that. And then, so that's a safe place for nurses to go into. Then there's a forum. So this forum, you can have a live chat. There's going to be, files to share. I think it says there, where you can, there's going to be, there's resources, there's evidence. I think there's even a chat section. Well, maybe it is just to sign up.
Okay, so I think if there's a login, there's one specific for nurses or members, and then you can also log in yourself if you're not. Is that?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
I'll try to log in myself and see if I could set up an account.
Yes.
It's really cool. It's actually like a real social media. Like it has everything that Facebook has without the censorship.
Oh yeah. Well, that's perfect. Because I know one of the biggest issues here is the connecting with other people. And there's still people who are, they feel isolated, and they don't, they just haven't been able to connect, and they are stuck on places like Facebook and Instagram and trying to, but they want to do something more active. So this would be a great resource for them.
And then the petition is kind of neat because the petition would be, I think there's two, I think we're getting another one up. But there was one for me because someone started a very negative petition against me.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think they try to counter it, but this one is for nursing and health care workers to sign. Yeah.
Awesome.
To sign as well, just to kind of start. I think people just don't know this petition exists, but it's to kind of say no to everything and to say, you know, that, yeah, and showing all the people that are, oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of them are Canadians.
Yeah.
So we're doing good.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And the more support we can give you, the better, because I do know that, I mean, I grew up, my grandmother was a nurse, my aunt was a nurse, and they sort of believed that, you know, the doctor was kind of like God, you know, you follow the doctor's advice, and we're under the assumption that people in healthcare, they care about your health. And I know you two ladies do, but not everybody does. It's kind of like, just because you wear a white coat doesn't mean that you're a saint. You know, you got to look at the whole picture. So,
and it's not even that they don't care about health. It's just, that's not what they've been taught.
Yeah.
The system, you know, it was created that way to, you know, you look at disease, you look at illness, how do you treat this disease and illness, and what do you prescribe for these symptoms? So it's just unfortunate because that's why we need a new, like, revolution. Like, we need to, you know, create something new what focuses on actual health and prevention and lifestyle and you know, and all of these amazing topics that actually, you know, keep people healthy. It's just I'd say, like, you know, they come from a good place and a good heart. They want to help, but they lack so much education because they're only taught a certain way.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think the better way to view it is it's more set up like a trade school.
Yeah.
And what you're learning to do is a specific thing that, like you were saying, you're told what to do and how to do it, but you're not told to be a critical thinker. And I think the traditional definition of a doctor was a teacher, somebody who would remind you how you can become healthy so you don't have to be sick again, so you don't have to see them again, to give you that back so you can then go on and live your life.
Yeah, exactly. It seems so simple.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you both so much for coming on, and I hope you get some more support from this video. Again, I'm going to post all those links, and we'll have the website for your project, Sarah, for Lighting Up Dark Corners, and for Kristen, your website. Do you have one set up for your courses?
Not really. I'm working on it. So right now, most people can find me on Instagram at Kristen_Nagel.
All right, perfect. And I know you're on Telegram too.
Oh, I am on Telegram too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Kristen_Nagel, and on Telegram, it's your name as well. So yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.